Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the rhetoric and the reality of the situation with economic migration and the capacity of our domestic labour force to meet the needs of the economy. Because there's been more rubbish talked about both this week at the CBI conference. Potentially harmful rhetoric from the Tories is to be expected, but it looks like we're getting a dose of clumsy language again from Starmer today as well. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So on this occasion, both major party leaders who seem to be needlessly talking rubbish. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak spent part of yesterday telling business leaders that their problems with a severe labour shortage were caused by too many people coming into the country. Now, it might be less surreal than talking about Peppa Pig world as Boris Johnson did in his speech to the CBI last year, but it's of no more practical use. You know, they want to know, what is the government going to do to help? And he's basically saying, boats, boats. Yes, but what are you going to do? No, boats. Look at the boats. But Starmer is little better here. He's telling the CBI that businesses need to wean themselves off cheap labour. Now in itself, yes, fine. Rebalancing the distribution of wealth and raising the overall levels of pay of underpaid workers is the way forward. But then, according to a report ahead of the speech, I'm saying this before the speech has taken place, but with what we've knows leaked out, come the ill-fated words, our common goal must be to help the British economy off its immigration dependency. Now, this is a nonsense. Even given that I defend some of the Brexit nonsense from Labour in the interests of winning the election, it's how it has to be done, how is this statement necessary? Yes, people believe that we rely too much on foreign labour. By all means, talk about, we should reduce dependence with better skills and training, as he will do. It's a fact that the Tories have massively cut back on education. I saw that firsthand as a teacher, largely in colleges. If you can not only invest properly in education, but also encourage people to learn the skills they're badly short of, yes, you can reduce your reliance on immigration for some of those skilled professions. But what we cannot do is reduce our reliance on the overall numbers of migrant workers without either higher levels of automation in the workplace or shrinking our economy down to much more modest levels. And I mean much more modest levels. It's this simple. Never mind skills, we've got fewer people available for work. So that's people in work and people looking for work. Add them up, that's fewer people than we have full-time equivalent positions for them. The maths is simple. Right now, we need more workers. Those workers are not to be found in the UK. Yes, this is not to say we have no unemployed. There are geographical problems where you've got pockets of unemployment in parts of the country where there aren't really vacancies. And you've got lots of vacancies in other parts of the country where you haven't really got a lot of people looking for work. We have a very uneven distribution of investment around the country. But there is still a mismatch between the number of jobs and the number of people. This has been caused by several things. First, lack of education. The average age of an engineer, for example, keeps going up because more retire, but not enough are coming in at the bottom end of the trade. This could be rectified with more investment in education, as I say, but also incentives to get the best students to study for professions where we are in need. You know, it's all right having some brilliant potential engineers and all they go off to study media studies. I'm not bashing media studies, but we probably have more media studies graduates than we need and nowhere near enough engineering graduates. But the thing is, that's all a long-term aim. You know, that's not something that Starmer could even realistically see to come to fruition as Prime Minister if he were to be Prime Minister for 10 years. You can put things in place so that for the next generation, you reaping the results, but you're not going to see it in a few years. Second, we missed out on lots of migrant labour. Initially, it started with the pandemic. You know, with travel restrictions, some foreign workers went home, didn't come back. And now it's due to the end of freedom of movement that came with Brexit. You know, it's true that what we're still seeing is high levels of migration, as the Tories would call it. You know, that's been because to compensate for the lack of EU workers, they've issued way more visas for people around the world much higher degree than before. But the process of having to sort out visas is time consuming, it's expensive. And that's an expense that our economy has to meet. But we're still falling short of the workers needed because it's now way harder to attract those people. Not helped by the fact, we could be dealing with asylum claims much more quickly and find a ready workforce on our doorstep. Third, a large proportion of our existing workforce, or as it existed a couple of years ago, are too ill to work. It's not just that people have retired, too ill to work, at least at full productivity. Poor healthcare, including with long COVID, has meant lots of people dropping out of the labour force before their time. You've got a waiting list of nearly 7 million people for NHS treatment of all sorts. That means that people are unfit to work at full capacity until they get the treatment. And actually, the longer it takes to get treatment, the less likely they are to make a full recovery anyway. The sum total is mathematical reality. It's that both Labour and the Tories seem to want to deny. We have fewer workers than jobs. So we need more immigration, not less. Better training doesn't fix that. It moves the already too small labour force around. It can raise the average incomes of your domestic workers. So that's good. But higher wages don't fix it either. It moves workers from one employer to another. Now, they're both essential. We need better education and skills. We need better pay. But they don't do anything about this deficit between workers and jobs. You need something else for that. And there are only two ways to do it, as I said. First, you somehow replace a load of the jobs with automated processes. That way, the business maintains its productivity, even boosts its productivity without needing the extra workers. Now, this sort of thing does happen over time, of course, but we're quite far behind other advanced economies when it comes to automation. Also, it's not something that can be driven that much by government policy. They can encourage it. They can certainly remove blocks discouraging it. But Labour can't come to power, click their fingers and suddenly fill 500,000 jobs with robots. Whatever long-term potential there is for further automation of manual jobs, artificial intelligence, and there's plenty as technology advances. In the immediate future, we need people. Then your second option, that is to let the excess jobs, the jobs that can't be filled right now, just die out. Stand firm, wait until the number and type of jobs available matches the available workforce in the parts of the country it exists. Let the businesses who are currently struggling to recruit either shrink their operations, move abroad, or just fail completely. Certainly current Tory policy is moving towards this end. Now, this is fine if your aim is a genuine reduction in immigration, but it means having a smaller economy, being a poorer country, having much less influence in the world. That is the price you pay. Even Japan, of the major economies, famously very wary of immigration, not very keen on it at all. Got a huge migrant labour force, though. They don't skimp on the migrant labour force. They can't. You cannot maintain a large economy. And the thing is, a wealthy country is wealthy because it takes more than its fair share of resources. Well, people are the most important resource we have. If you don't attract large numbers of migrant workers, we don't maintain a large economy. That is just mathematically fact. But then there's another element to consider. Immigrants actually contribute more to our economy. It's not just that we don't have enough workers. It's like on average, a migrant worker is worth more than a domestic worker. And I'm not just talking about, because they work hard and stuff like that. Some do, some don't. There was a study a few years ago showing a higher contribution made by both European and non-European migrants. And it's easy to explain empirically. You think it through. First of all, migrant workers have to pay the NHS surcharge. Now, this is wrong in my opinion. It shouldn't be happening. But it is. And it's a tax which runs to thousands of pounds extra just for migrant workers in the UK. So a foreign nurse pays thousands of pounds more tax than a British nurse. For the same pay, doing the same work. It's wrong. But it is there nonetheless. It's a fact. Second, there'll be some migrant workers who come here for work, then stay, yes. But as most of them would already be adults when they arrive, some other country has educated them for us. So that's a saving. In addition, a higher proportion are employed because, they came here for work. So that's an average saving as well. And at the end of their working lives, assuming they stayed here, some will retire back to their country of origin. So another state will deal with their health and social care in their declining years. None of this is difficult to understand. There are genuinely complex issues for which you inevitably mislead a bit with the public because simple explanations are tricky. The public hasn't got the attention span. But this is simple. And from Labour's point of view, I get that you can't re-educate the public on the basics of economics. I often have to argue from the other end here. People say, oh, why do Labour have to say that? Why do they have to say that? You can't. The public have an idea in their heads and you can't just say that they're wrong. You know, I defend the fact that they have to go along with a certain level of nonsense, like the notion of national finances being like household finances, that you can't run a deficit at any time. Because there's no way of saying to the public that the Tories and almost the entire mainstream media is lying to you, only we're telling you the truth. It's true, the Tories and most of the mainstream media are lying to people. But you can't, as a party political leader, say that to people and be believed. That's not going to work. It's also why I defend, as I say, some of the Brexit nonsense they have to come out with. The voters who flip governments, it's a relatively small number. It's not a majority. It's a relatively small number. And it's mostly of elderly voters. Any party who wants to form a government has to work with that. But what's the point of this? What is the point of this? Absolutely, you can say that we can reduce dependency on immigration with better education and skills training, which Labour would do. And it's technically true. Absolutely say that we need to move to a higher wage economy, which doesn't rely on cheap labour. Fine, because migrant labour doesn't have to be cheap labour. You can say those things, and they're true, but could also have been taken by some to mean lower immigration, or at least lower levels of the immigration they think is problematic. Fine. But the combination of what is being reported for the CBI speech, which may well have taken place by the time this video comes out, but not at the time I'm recording it, and the earlier comments about too many foreign nurses the other week, it's clumsy. That's what I don't like. It's clumsy. And what's more, I struggle to believe it's really necessary. You know, I also say to people, it's true. I don't know what Labour's polling of their target voters says. We don't see it. None of us see that. I keep saying this to people. We see national trends. We know where the majority of public opinion is at any particular time. We also know that it flips quite a bit. But the majority of public opinion doesn't matter, because we don't have a representative system of democracy. But even if you had to get certain messages out to appeal to the small number of voters who do matter, surely there are more intelligent ways of doing it without using language that's both untrue, which has to happen in politics, but also reduces confidence in others. I mean, this could just be another example of saying one thing, the policies show another, as with Brexit. You know, the policies behind the rhetoric, the actual policies, which I like to focus on, are of practical use. Because politicians, you know, people say, oh, politicians should be honest. Well, then the people should reward honesty in politics then. But they don't. The public punish honesty in politics. So you can't be honest with what you say, but you can be with what you do. And the policies behind the speech, as it's been reported, include more investment in education and skills training. That is beneficial to workers and business owners alike. The report also says that he's not going to promise that migration levels will come down. So it's like, oh yeah, we should really reduce our dependency, but in reality, you know, it's not actually going to be lower. Okay, fine. At least he's been realistic with what he'll aim to do. He's not just claiming that the problem is rubber boats and then doing nothing. But the rhetoric's still clumsy. It's one thing to be unable to counter public ignorance on important issues, but it is another to add to that sum total of ignorance. But anyway, those are my thoughts. There we are. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.